Every story has a beginning, and mine begins with my parents. My parents can be credited for being the main reason I've become the person I am today. They have helped me to grow and to mature in all aspects of life. They can be credited for my beliefs, my morals, and the values that I hold.
My parents come from two very different families. My mother grew up on a farm and belonged to a hard-working family. She was the oldest of 5 siblings. She grew up in a Roman Catholic household. All the children in my mother's family attended Catholic school all the way through high school. Needless to say, they attended church every Sunday.
My grandfather was a strict, hard-working man. As my mother explains quite often, he was a man of few words and was as tough as nails.
He died before I was born of cancer, making his description quite accurate. He fought till his last days.
My grandmother came from a wealthy Irish family and was an educator in Peoria, Illinois. She is one of 8 children. Along with my grandmother, 3 of her siblings all became educators. Large families were a norm on my mother's side of the family and led to influence many of my values and beliefs.
My father grew up in a very different household. My grandfather was not my father's life as a young child, so it was just my dad, my uncle, and my grandmother. A single-parent home caused my father to have to take up responsibilities quicker and to get a job at a young age.
My grandmother worked long hours to support her family, and this passed on to my father. He's had a full-time, 40-hour-a-week job since he was 15. This hard-working attitude was passed on to myself. My father has pushed me since day one. Elementary school through high school, my father pushed me to excel at everything and to always do well academically. He was very old school in his parenting style. As a young child, he was mostly at work to provide for my brother, mother, and I, but he still held a stern hand in the household. His hardworking attitude was passed along to me, and I used this in every adventure I embarked on. My father was not alone in raising me, and my mother also played a hand in doing so. Just as my mother and father came from 2 very different families, their personalities were very different. Just as my father was hardworking, my mother was carefree and lighthearted. Coming from a large family, my mother was very family-oriented growing up, and family meant a lot to her. We would join the rest of my family to celebrate each holiday together. At a young age, my father insisted that I play sports. There was no break from seasons as I went from junior football league to Little League. As I grew older, this changed and Little League was exchanged for work, and football got more intense. Juggling school, sports, and work was a given from my parents, especially my dad. Through understanding my parents, one can only better understand me. They have been an important part of my life. Everything I take with me into the future, my parents have influenced. I still have a long way to go, but who knows what the road has in store. The values, beliefs, and philosophies that I have learned from my parents will accompany me along the way.